This rumor's like a bad replica. It keeps showing up, even when no one asked. And yeah, with China cranking out everything from smartphones to sneakers, it's easy to assume even Rolex might have a Shanghai side hustle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Rolex keeps it close to the chest, real close. Sure, some generic parts like crystals or screws might come from outside Switzerland, but the important stuff, designed, assembled, and obsessively quality checked in-house in Switzerland. Think less made in China, more built in a Swiss fortress with trust issues. Welcome back to Opulent Oasis. Today we're shutting down the myth that Rolex is outsourcing to the same factories that make your toaster. The confusion mostly comes from knockoffs, so good they could fool your wrist in a dark room. Some of these clones are basically Rolexes without the legal fees. But here's the kicker, Swiss law doesn't play. To slap Swiss made on a dial, the watch has to pass strict tests, and Rolex doesn't just pass, they rewrite the curve. So no, your submariner didn't take a detour through Dongguan. The global manufacturing myth, is Rolex made in China? It's a fair question. China makes almost everything these days, so it's no surprise people start to wonder if Rolex might be quietly cruising the same supply chain. At this point, assuming made in China feels like the default setting. And yeah, China absolutely dominates the watch world by volume, but that's mostly the fast food tier of timepieces. Rolex, that's white tablecloth territory, where things are slow cooked, hand finished, and priced accordingly. You don't confuse a drive-through burger with a dry-aged steak served under a chandelier. The real source of confusion? Fakes, and they're getting dangerously good, especially the ones pouring out of China. Some are so spot on that even collectors do a double take. That's when people start wondering, if the fakes are this good, maybe the real ones are made there too. That's like finding a fake Picasso in a flea market and assuming the original was painted on a t-shirt. But here's the truth, Rolex isn't playing that game. They run a tight, obsessively controlled Swiss operation. The parts that matter, the movement, the case, the bracelet, the final touch, are all made and assembled in-house. Outsourcing. Rolex would rather eat their warranty papers and wash it down with polishing oil. Pause for a moment. Why not join our Opulent Oasis community? Hit subscribe to stay in the loop. Now, let's continue our journey inside Rolex, the Swiss-made reality. Sure, a few tiny parts of a Rolex might be sourced internationally, springs, gaskets, some raw materials, but let's not get dramatic. The stuff that matters, the movement, the case, the bracelet, the finishing, that's all Swiss through and through. It's like saying a luxury car isn't German because the cup holder came from Taiwan. Rolex may have started in London in 1905, but it found its forever home in Geneva by 1919, and it's been speaking fluent Swiss ever since. They didn't just move countries, they joined a national identity program with a gold membership. Now, Swiss made isn't just a pretty label, it's a protected status backed by law, with enough fine print to make a lawyer cry. Swiss movement? Check. Assembled and cased in Switzerland? Check. Final inspection done locally? Yep. Plus, 60% of the total manufacturing cost has to come from Switzerland. Basically, the watch has to prove it pays Swiss taxes before it gets that label. But Rolex doesn't stop at 60%. Over 90% of each watch's value is created right there on Swiss soil, by Rolex, in Rolex-owned facilities, with Rolex-level control. They don't just pass the bar, they moved it higher, bolted it down, and threw away the wrench. They run 4 major hubs in Switzerland, each with a specific obsession. Bienne builds the movements, Plain-les-Ouates smelts the gold, Cherbourg handles dials and gem setting. If you ever wondered what a watch company with commitment issues looks like, this ain't it. Rolex doesn't like surprises, and they definitely don't like third-party assembly lines. They want their hands on everything, from the raw metal to the final polish. Outsourcing. For Rolex, that's a horror story best told around a campfire. Yes, a few minor components come from outside Switzerland, but that doesn't mean the watch was made there. That's like claiming IKEA is French because you lit a croissant-scented candle while building a bookshelf. Think Apple, but with less PR and more secrecy. Designed, controlled, perfected in-house, even if a few tiny parts hitch a ride from abroad. If Rolex's supply chain had a motto, it'd be, trust no one and verify twice. At the end of the day, the Rolex you wear isn't just Swiss in name, it's Swiss in guts, bolts, and borderline obsessive quality control. Because when your crown is this iconic, you guard it like it's the last vault in Switzerland. Counterfeits, reputation, and the value of Swiss craftsmanship. Let's not dance around it. The main reason people throw Rolex and China in the same sentence is because of fakes. The counterfeit Rolex market is enormous, easily pulling in over $1 billion a year. And yeah, most of those fakes come out of factories in China. At this point, there are probably more fake submariners on the market than actual submarines in the ocean. And to be fair, some of these knockoffs are scary good. They've got the weight, the shine, the box, and sometimes even the nerve. But there's always a giveaway. Ticking second hands, Rolex sweeps, remember, odd weight balance, sloppy laser etching, or a logo that's just off. If the crown's leaning like it's had a long night, it's probably not the real deal. The sheer volume of these counterfeits messes with perception. When you've got fake Rolexes flooding the internet and night markets, people start to assume that anything Rolex-related must involve China somehow. Repetition doesn't make it true, but it does make it annoying. So why do people care so much where a Rolex is made? Because a Rolex isn't just a tool that tells time, it's a symbol of tradition, of skill, of someone saying, yeah, I waited 18 months and paid 5 figures, and I'd do it again. It's less about punctuality and more about prestige with punctuation. Swiss watchmaking hits differently. It's not just geography, it's heritage. When a brand's been perfecting its craft for generations, slapping on "Made in Switzerland" means something. Mass production might win on speed, but it rarely wins on soul. Even well-made, factory-built watches don't carry the weight Rolex does. The brand has somehow managed to stay timeless, while the world around it keeps chasing trends and charging things with USB-C. Rolex is basically the luxury version of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the receipts are there. In 2023, Rolex was ranked the most reputable company in the world, not just in watches, in everything. You know you're doing something right when you outrank companies curing diseases and launching satellites. That kind of trust doesn't come from slapping a name on a dial. It comes from keeping things tight, staying picky, and never letting quality slide, not even when the knockoff market is breathing down your neck. If Rolex were a person, they'd be the one triple-checking your group project and still doing all the work. So, are Rolex watches made in China? Nope. Some tiny parts might be globally sourced, but the core of the watch, design, movement, assembly, finishing, is handled in Switzerland under Rolex's watchful and probably slightly judging eye. Because when someone buys a Rolex, they're buying more than metal and mechanics. They're buying a legacy, one that's been guarded like a national treasure for over a century. In a world full of shortcuts, Rolex is still taking the long, scenic route and polishing it to perfection. So, what's your verdict? Does Rolex's Swiss vault-level control make you admire them more, or are they just the world's most stylish control freaks? Ever had a close call with a fake? Or maybe spotted one so bad it ticked and talked? Drop it all in the comments. We promise we're not too Swiss to reply. If you liked this kind of no BS breakdown, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and poke around the Opulent Oasis channel. We've got plenty more deep dives, hot takes, and watch world truths you won't hear from the sales counter. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and maybe double-check that Rolex before flexing it.